So my hand, so I'm not out of the brace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to do physical therapy on my hand.
Okay.
So this is my hat. It's
Okay.
white and it's adorable. It's got ears and it has these little legs here, right? And when I squeeze them, it exercises my fingers, but it also pops the ears up and down. Isn't that adorable?
That is so cute. I want one of that.
It's making my hand stronger and it's giving me happiness at the same time.
Well, the only problem with that though is that you can only see it if you look in the mirror though.
I can feel it popping up and down, and it's just like I know what it's doing.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
It's adorable, but that's my hat that I'm using to strengthen my hand back up, and we're all good.
Actually, so when I was at the Drum Majorettes Nationals, where I got this bow from, there was actually like those stalls with all the nitty gritty stuff that you can buy. And I think they actually had one of those hats that you can like poppity pop pop. And I was like, I want it, I want it. But then I was like, no, I want the bow more. So I was like, sacrifices. Just like we're sacrificing characters in our novel.
You can wear the bow more places than the hat, honestly.
True. Like now. I want to feel like Minnie Mouse. Just has to be a bigger bow though.
I took some notes from your book and I bought myself a tea sampler.
Ooh.
Today is a black cherry berry tea with Idaho wild honey to sweeten it.
Ooh. Ooh. Now I feel like I'm just drinking something boring. Is it delicious? Is it good?
It is. It smells so good. It smells just like black cherries.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm gonna do my boring. I have a chai latte today. Because I was feeling tea, but I was also kind of feeling coffee, so I got a mixture of both. So we'll be doing that today. Okay, are we ready for this episode?
I am ready.
Hey ho, let's go! Welcome to Tea and Tales. We are happy to have you here with us. I'm Madeline Ainal.
And I'm Sarah Sampson. We especially want to thank Emma, Jack, and Angela Blakely for tuning into our podcast. This week, we have our last author spotlight of season 3, and we have the amazing author and podcaster, Bianca Marais on. Welcome to Tea and Tales. We are thrilled to have you here, and especially as our author spotlight. So I'm excited to hear more about your journey.
Thank you so much to you both for having me. It's weird to be on the other side, but I will try and behave myself.
First of all, you just released a new novel. It's called A Most Puzzling Murder. Did you know it's not available in South Africa? I was like, that was a tad rude. Because then I had to read the entire thing on my Kindle. Do you know how hard that was?
So sorry. South Africa takes forever to get the books in. I don't know why. And the Kindle is challenging. And that's why I put a booklet up on my website so that you can download the booklet and do the puzzles in there. But you know what was even more challenging was rewriting the audiobook, because the audiobook could not be the same as the book because so many of the puzzles are visual. So I almost had to do rewrites on that as well. So this was a very technical book, and I apologize for that now that you had to go through that.
I made it to the end. That's fine. That's fine. So as Sarah mentioned before, you have a podcast that Shit No One Tells You About Writing. If you've never heard of it, go listen to it, especially if you are a writer, if you're a debut writer, because Bianca, Cici, and Carly give fantastic advice. Tell us a little bit more about your writing journey, because before A Most Puzzling Murder, you released 2 previous novels, which was historical fiction.
Yes, so actually before that even, so my debut, if you don't know the words, I considered it book club fiction. I've now discovered that the year in which I was born, which is 1976, is considered historical fiction, which was how very rude. The next book, which was called If You Want to Make God Laugh, was based in South Africa again, was based in 1994. That is also weirdly apparently considered historical fiction, but it's more book club fiction. After those 2, I pivoted to fantasy, and I wrote The Witches of Moonshine Manor, which is about 6 witches in their 80s who are bringing down the patriarchy. And then I went to A Most Puzzling Murder, which is a closed room murder mystery, which is like Knives Out meets Succession meets Prince Harry's Heir, and it's got magic thrown in as well. So it's a bit of everything.
We're always taught not to have multiple genres that you write, and you were just like, Hello, welcome. This is me.
Yeah, you know what? The frustrating thing is that people in the past, if they wrote under different genres, had to have pen names under all these different genres. So you would find out that an author who you love writing science fiction actually also writes romances. And then you looked at people like Margaret Atwood, who was like, I'm just going to write whatever the bloody hell I want, and I'm going to put it under my name. When I changed genres, I said to my publishers, do you want me to write under different names? Because quite honestly, my father is quite annoyed that I took my husband's name when I got married, which in South Africa is very regular. It's only in Canada that I realized that many people don't do that. And my father wants De Vries on one of my books because that is my maiden name, Bianca de Vries. And the publisher was like, no, we're sticking with what you have for each book, and hopefully your readers can read a jacket copy and go, okay, so this is different to her last book.
That makes a lot of sense to me, to not have to worry about coming up with a new name. I love that trend coming out. And thank you to the older authors who have created that trend and made it easier on all of us. How has your writing journey been affected by your podcast?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. So I started it off when COVID hit. I was teaching at the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies. COVID hit in the middle. We suddenly had to pivot to Zoom and all kinds of stuff. And a lot of things ended. And then suddenly I was contacted by a ton of book clubs from all over the world who were now doing their book clubs virtually. And I was constantly speaking to people. And during that time, I think every person and their dog and their dog's gerbil decided that they wanted to write a book because they had nothing better to do. And so I had so many people DMing me on socials and emailing me, people going back to school saying, I've decided to write a book. How do I write a book? And I realized two things. One, I kept replying the same things over and over. And two, while I was teaching this creative writing program, I realized that it's a barrier to entry. Not many people can afford these kinds of courses. And I wanted to go, okay, how do we take away barriers to entry, and how can I get to as many people as possible with the same advice? And as someone who had never listened to podcasts, I was like, let me start a podcast. And I was very excited when I got 100 downloads. In the beginning, I thought I was going to be teaching people, but the podcast has taught me so much. There isn't an interview that I do where a writer doesn't say something that I don't scribble it down, or while I'm reading their work to interview them, where I don't just suddenly go, oh my God, this is amazing what they did this. How did they do that? And go back and learn from it. So I firmly believe that I've been made a better writer through the podcast. And this is why I tell people, when you get beta readers to read your work, you think your work is going to be improved by the critique they give you. And yes, your work is improved by that, but in fact, you become a much better writer by critiquing other people's work.
Yes. And I'm really glad to hear you say that, because this week I have seen so many people who are new writers who are saying, I finally finished my manuscript. How do I get it to an editor? And I'm like, hold on, get into the beta readers and then worry about the editing. So I'm really glad to hear other accomplished writers believe that.
Yeah, because you know what? It's a big deal to write a book. I remember my first 2 books, I wrote them in like 3 months. I typed the end. I thought I was amazing. And at that point, you still had to print out the damn manuscript and post it off to these agents across the world. And then you had to pay for the insult and the rejection to come back so that they can send you your thick manuscript back. That was the biggest mistake, because you get so excited and you rush it out. But really, you need to sit with it, put it aside. Don't look at it for 3 months. Then start getting beta readers. Get a few at a time. Get them to read it. Then get in 4 different beta readers. The biggest mistake you can make is just rushing it off and thinking, okay, you're going to be the next, whoever, and you can make millions, because that doesn't generally happen.
No, it doesn't. What I do love is the fact that from your writing came the community work that you have done. So tell us a little bit more about your community work.
Okay, so actually the community work far preceded the writing. So in South Africa in 2003, I got married, and the AIDS pandemic in South Africa was really taking off. I lost people that I knew to the AIDS pandemic. pandemic, and it was really frustrating to be this very privileged white person sitting behind my high security fences doing nothing in a country that was being ravaged by this pandemic. And so I joined an organization called Cotlins, where I became a volunteer. It was originally an orphanage for orphaned HIV positive children to stay there, and we as volunteers would take them out over the weekends and take them to the movies and the zoo, etc. But as the pandemic just exploded, there weren't enough orphanages to house these children. And so we started something called home-based care in Soweto. I used to spend 3 or 4 days in Soweto. We started a project with the Gogos, which means grannies, and they started an income generation scheme, and they were making these beautiful pajamas, and we were helping them market them. And I came into contact with the Stephen Lewis Foundation in South Africa, which is a brilliant foundation in Canada, which does so much work for the Gogos in South Africa. When I came to Toronto from South Africa, I was still helping out with a lot of stuff that was happening there, but it was becoming more and more difficult. And my childhood caregiver, Eunice Ngogodo, is the person that I credit with the fact that I grew up very differently, thinking very differently to a lot of people my age in South Africa who were very brainwashed in terms of apartheid and in terms of racism, etc. And Eunice was the person I dedicated my first novel to. A lot of it was inspired by her. So I started the Eunice Ngogodo Own Voices initiative, because just about the time that my debut novel came out, If You Don't Know the Words, I wrote from two perspectives in that book. One was a Black woman called Beauty, and one was a young white child. And I wrote from a Black woman's perspective in my second novel as well. And we were starting to have a lot of conversations then about appropriation. Who has the right to tell which stories? I listened to so much feedback from Black writers, the Black community, how they felt about it. And I realized that they were right. It wasn't fair that I was telling their stories, even though I was trying to do so with great respect, even though I hired authenticity readers and sensitivity readers, etc. So I started the Eunice Ngogodo Own Voices initiative, and we put a young woman through her MFA at U of T, and I cannot wait for her book to come out. We've done fundraising through that for various other things. So the two have kind of blended together. I've taken my love of fundraising and helping people and combine that with my love of writing and using the podcast as a platform for that.
I think that's a great way to do it. Like, that's what writers should be trying to do, is fill their life with amazing things and then put it into their books. And I'm just in awe by how much you had done with that and being able to reach so many people, and especially with the own voices and helping people be able to put their words onto the page. When you write a book from a perspective that's not your own, even though you get sensitivity readers, sometimes you can get people who push back against that. How do you handle that sort of negative feedback or readers not appreciating what you're trying to do?
Yeah, you know what? It's something I've gotten better at navigating, because I'm a big people pleaser from very young. And generally when people are cross with me or angry with me, I lie awake all night and it bothers me. I think early on what I learned to do is to listen. When people are angry about things, it comes from a place that they're passionate about. When I had some Black authors reach out to me and say, we can't get published outside of South Africa. We can only get published in South Africa, but you have this platform and you are telling our stories. They had a really good point. Our initial response to criticism is to immediately just turn off from it and say people don't know what they're talking about. But we can learn so much from constructive criticism. But again, there can be criticism for the sake of it. Recently, I did fundraising for children to be fed in Palestine. And there was a group of writers who were doing it. Megan Collins was running it. She's absolutely incredible. And we were not fundraising for the big organizations because aid was not getting into Palestine. We were fundraising for people on the ground and getting money into their bank accounts. And I had a whole bunch of people who emailed me and were furious with me and said, what about the Israeli hostages? And how can you do this? And why aren't you standing up for, Jewish people? And then it becomes, this is about starving children. This is not about politics. And I've seen too many starving children in South Africa to just sit by and not do anything. And I will listen to their frustrations, but when it starts to become abusive, then I'll just block because there's no point in entering into dialogue. In my latest book, readers can email the main character to get clues for the puzzles if they struggle with the puzzles, and she emails them back. And I've had some, obviously it's a dude, who's emailed me like every day to tell me why every puzzle is crap and how I could have done it so much better. I just don't engage because there's no point. What am I going to say? I think my puzzles are great. You got to learn which battles to fight.
I know the puzzles. Nell, every day she'd be like, Sarah, this new puzzle, this new puzzle. So, you have different people who appreciate it.
Yeah, you know what? The puzzles, they were all calibrated at different skill sets, different ways of thinking. Some people are mathematical. Some people are word people. Some people are more logical. Like the math ones, I couldn't do myself. My husband put those puzzles together for me. And I just thought it was fun to interact with the main character. Like as a kid, nothing would have made me happier than to email a character and have them, email me back.
Okay, that's three things now that I want to say. First off, is I love the fact that your husband helped you with the puzzles. That is super cool. Because side note, you and your husband have like game nights that you do, and you have, where are my sticky notes?
It's escape room team.
Things that you are doing, and I'm like, that is so cool because I love how you incorporate it into your novel. And then secondly, am I allowed to even email Destiny back? Because I would email the clue and then she would give me the clue and I'm like, okay, that stops there, right? Like, am I allowed to interact more? I was like, what is going to happen if I do?
Some people email back and say, thank you so much, but the system isn't set up for further engagement. It took me forever to get these like rules in place because there are readers who think it's me sitting there replying to everybody in the world at all times of day and night with the clues. If the subject line is clue 1, then this is what you get. And some people reply and go, thank you so much, Destiny. I appreciate it, which is lovely because it feels like this weird parasocial relationship. But yeah, it isn't set up to the point where there's going to be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah. And thirdly, God gave me the creative side of my brain. Okay. God did not give me puzzles as a brain. Okay. But I was determined to do your puzzles. Okay. Well, first off, because I have the Kindle, I was like, I won't be able to write in a book. So I absolutely love the booklet that you have on your website. So for anyone who is reading The Most Puzzling Murder, definitely go to Bianca's website if you do not want to draw on your own book. And so I love all of these. I must admit, I have never, ever heard of a nonogram before in my life. Okay. Yes, I know.
I love nanograms.
I've never heard of that before.
I had never heard of them either. So before I did this book, I researched a lot of puzzles and the different kind of puzzles. And that's how I figured out about nonograms as well. So you and I are on the same page there.
Yeah, so that was really cool to play. Definitely go try it out. Even if you're not a puzzler, it is super fun to do. But A Most Puzzling Murder. It came out this year. And I would love, love, love for you to read a little excerpt. So Bianca, would you please, because I feel when you read this, it will give the listener an idea of what your novel is about.
Yeah, so this is a letter to the reader. It's right at the beginning. It goes, Dear intrepid reader, consider yourself warned. Nothing in these pages is quite what it appears. As our heroine, Destiny Whip, struggles to uncover the secrets of her past, which are somehow interwoven with the Scruffmore family's own dark machinations, she will be tasked with solving myriad cryptic clues, puzzles, and riddles. You can do the same alongside her, perhaps even beating her in the race to figure it all out. After all, you'll have insider information that Destiny isn't privy to, and in some instances, you'll actually become different characters in the occasional choose your own conundrum chapters. Pick wisely in these sections, as your decisions will have consequences in terms of what new information gets revealed to you. Pay close attention because almost everything is a clue, including the symbols at the top of each chapter, which are part of a greater puzzle. Only when you see 2 stars will you be called upon to solve whichever mystery is being presented to you. This may require going back to earlier chapters to make sense of information whose purpose wasn't clear at the time. You'll also have opportunities throughout the story to engage with Destiny herself, emailing her for clues, and important bonus content. As you're reading, if you spot something that might be important later on, go ahead and underline it or make a note in the text. Now, this part is for you now. If the thought of writing in these pages fills you with horror, let me assure you that this book is vastly different from other more prim and proper tomes. This most peculiar tale positively demands that you engage with it. Each time you bring pen to paper, imagine the pages purring in appreciation. If this is a library book or another format you can't mark up, don't fear. You'll find a downloadable booklet on my website that includes all the puzzles as well as various sections for note-taking. Now, if getting down with your bad code-breaking self sounds nerve-wracking, please don't panic. There's absolutely no need to chuck this book at the person who recommended it, especially not if that person is a bookseller. Never chuck anything at a bookseller, except wads of cash for more books and maybe snacks. You can skip each puzzle entirely by flipping to the relevant page at the back for the answer. The puzzles all vary with regard to the degree of difficulty and the type of skill set required to solve them. Struggling with one doesn't mean you'll battle with all of them. At least give them a try, because you just might surprise yourself. And isn't that one of the most incredible experiences of all in this puzzling adventure that we call life? Signed, your chief exasperator, Bianca.
I grew up in a household of puzzles and puzzlers and all the things. And it's just like, oh, yes, I need this kind of book in my life. I'm not a good puzzle writer, though. That's why I don't write mysteries and things like that. But what I do write a lot is multi-POV. And I feel like, especially in a mystery, it's harder to write in multiple perspectives without giving things away. How do you balance the two, keeping the mystery while writing multiple POVs?
Well, the way I do it is I don't plot at all. I am a complete pantser. I started this book not knowing who died, why they died, who the killer was, any of those things, which everybody says you absolutely cannot do. And I said, okay, I'm going to create this fully formed character, Destiny Whip, who is really smart. She was a child prodigy. She notices things that other people don't notice. And then I'm just going to follow her, and hopefully she will lead me where I need to go. So the thing is, especially in a book like this, there are so many diabolical POVs. You know, I've written books with like 2 and 3 POV characters, and the people are damaged, but they're basically good people. Here I've got a royal family full of awful people who are all vying for power. Some of these POV characters are terrible, and I have to keep reminding myself that no antagonist is the evil person in their own story. They're always the hero. But halfway through the document, when I wasn't plotting, I had to stop and reverse engineer the book. So I had to have columns to say, what does Destiny know for sure at this point? What does Destiny suspect? What does this character know, but they haven't told Destiny? Who else have they told? And so it was very difficult to keep track of all those threads to make sure that Destiny didn't know something until it was revealed to her, etc., etc. So that was quite a big juggling act.
Yeah, no, I don't know how you did that, because I literally wrote a novel about a baking show, and the amount of sticky notes that I had on my wall, because I was just like, I have to have all of these facts back together, and it's not even a mystery. Was that a challenge that you put up for yourself? You were just like, I will show everybody.
I was just like, it was a challenge, because I interview so many authors for the podcast, and they're all the ones who write in the genre say you must outline, you must plot. And so I'm very contrarian. The minute you tell me I must do something, I'm like, really? But here's the thing. Every writer will find their own process. Find what works for you. It is great to hear how other writers do things, but when you try and emulate a process that isn't going to work for you, it's going to be difficult. And so in the beginning of my writing journey, I tried to outline, because I kept getting told, you have to outline. And it just ruined the whole writing experience for me. So for any writers who are listening, listen to how other people do things, but you'll find your way. And just when you think you know your way, the next book you write is going to teach you a whole new way of doing it, because every book teaches you how to write it. And so just be open to experimenting and have fun with it, play with it.
Speaking of next books, Bianca, the way that your novel ended, I was just like, is there going to be a sequel to this?
You know what? So here's the thing. In publishing, 9 times out of 10, when there is a sequel, it's not really because the author planned a sequel. It's because the book did so well that the publisher is like, well, this book did really well, so we want you to write another one. If this book gets optioned for film or something like that at some stage and it gets a huge readership, I won't say no to writing a sequel. I will say that this book broke my brain, and there were so many times that I sat there pulling out my hair and going, why did you do this? Why have you done this to yourself? So it's not one that I'm going to rush back to. But the thing is that if you read any of my books, you will notice that I never give a very conclusive ending to any of my books. There's always sort of a brief shining moment that gives you hope, or it gives you something to cling to, but it's always open to interpretation. And it drives my book clubs crazy, because I will speak to book clubs and they're like, but tell us how it really ends. You get to decide how it really ends. Like, I'm putting it in your hands. You, my reader, you get to decide. So I think that's something that I'm going to do in all of my books, although this one I did it the most.
As a fellow pantser writer, I do appreciate that you can write something so amazing without having to plan it out.
I had a question about the novel, since we are talking about it. You have magical elements in your novel because the royal family has magic around them and the island is magic and eerie and all those things. Did you plan not to dig so deep into the magic elements because you were more focused on the mystery of it all? How does this magic work? Like, what kind of magic is this? Like, what is the depth to this magic?
Oh, I know exactly how the magic works. I know exactly how the magic works for everyone, but this book started to become so cumbersome. You know, most books are 80,000 words. I think this book was like 110,000 words. And so we were already trying to cut things. There are bonus scenes that you actually have to email to get the bonus scenes, because we were trying to cut down word page. So there were whole parts of the magic world building that were taken out because my editor was like, let's focus on the plot. Let's focus on only the magic that is needed to be understood in terms of solving the mystery, because we're at a point now where books that are a lot of pages cost a lot of money. They cost so much more to print, and it's so much harder for the publisher, and the price point becomes more expensive. On our podcast, our two agents, Cece and Carly, are generally saying keep your novel at the 80,000 word mark, even for fantasy, because people are like, I'm writing epic fantasy. It's 150,000 words. And they're like, oh my God, no one's going to buy that. So yeah, I would have loved to explore that more. And I did explore that more. I had binders and binders of all the magic, but it became cut this out. It's not necessary. Cut this out. It's not necessary.
That makes me have to take a strong swallow. But keep my fantasies short. I have one fantasy that it snuck above the 100,000 range. And I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this. Readers, please tell me what isn't working for you, and what is, maybe I'm dwelling too long on something. Let me know so I can make it more succinct and pull down the word count so I'm not too high up, especially as a debut writer. And I know a lot of people out there will be like, oh, but this writer and that writer and this writer, they're all over 200,000, 300,000.
Well, this is George R. R. Martin. This is Brandon Sanderson. These are people who've been writing forever, and they're readers will go wherever. There are two things that we as writers become navel gazing with. One is research. And I've seen this with many historical fiction writers. They will research something so much and they know every little thing, like from what a button was made of for this particular military coat, which is different to the button that was used for that. And they'll want to write all about that because they know all of that. And it's quite honestly, it's boring. It slows the pacing. The reader doesn't need to know that. You're not writing a textbook on buttons, people. You're writing a story. And the same thing goes for those of us who do world building, because we know our world so intricately and we know the magic so intricately. So I was lucky in The Witches of Moonshine Manor to be able to explain the world building a bit better. Each of the witches' powers, I was able to explain it in a bit more of a scientific way. But even there, I was allowed like a paragraph or two. And then my editor was like, okay, move on, because you are having too much fun with your magical world and it's great, but it can slow down the pacing. Give the reader what is necessary.
And that's when we circle right back around to beta readers.
Yes. And the beta
Right.
readers are like, I don't understand this magic. Why does the magic work for this person and not this person? And then you're like, okay, well, that part was necessary. But then, your 3 pages on conjuring whatever, they're like, okay, we get it. He can conjure a fireball. Like, move on.
That is funny. So, in the recent year or so, every romance that I wrote had a goat as like a side character. And then Bianca came and she's like, raccoon. That's what we're going with. So I was like, interesting. That's a choice. First off, how did you decide it would be a raccoon when the entire novel has cats in it? But then also, I did find it interesting though, because I was like, the raccoon has a POV.
I also had a goat, I think, in my second novel. Her name was Falula. I just want to come back to that. But I'm obsessed with raccoons, and you'll know now, in South Africa, there aren't raccoons. So when I arrived in Canada, I became obsessed with these little trash pandas. Their little faces and their little bandit thingies, and they're so dexterous and they can open anything, and they're so bloody cute. And so I think I follow more raccoons and squirrels and other weird things than I follow like celebrities or influencers. So I had to put the cats in for my cat who died. Wombat, I promised her I would write a cat book, and then I needed that raccoon, man. I needed him.
Oh my gosh, raccoons and squirrels. I had the same obsession when I was in America. Squirrels everywhere. I kid you not, I was reading and then I was like, wombat. And I was like, hold your horses. And then I had to go back to all the research that I did of interviews of you. And I was like, I could have sworn she had a cat named Wombat. And I was like, that is so cute, first of all. And, nice tribute to your cat. Is Wombat the cat? I can't believe I'm saying it's coming out of my mouth. The cat that you saved or that you rescued from a serial killer in Soweto?
Yes. I think you can actually search for it. I had my audiobook narrator, Catherine McEwen, work with me. I wrote an essay about it and she recorded it. And Daphne Willis, who's an excellent musician, did the music for it. So you can actually search in the podcast backlist for the whole story. But yes, we were working at the nonprofit in Soweto with the Gogos. And this person came to oversee the property. He was hired by the church whose property it was. And while he was there, 3 young girls, aged between 12 and 17, were murdered. This man, Jonathan, who had this little kitten, who he had perched on his shoulder all the time. And the one girl, he thought she was dead, but she actually crawled for like a kilometer to a main road near Baragwanath Hospital in Soweto, and he cut her vocal cords, so she was no longer able to speak. She drew pictures, she drew maps, and we were there one day when the police arrived to arrest Jonathan. And the cat was then, she had no one to look after, and everybody thought she was bad luck. So we brought her home, and then we brought her to Canada. So that is how we got Wombat. She belonged to a serial killer.
I love that. Okay, so then one last question from my side. What I love about being a reader is that every reader has their own perspective when they're reading novels. But so your novel has, I want to say 8 POVs.
I think there's more, actually. If you include the choose your own adventure ones, I don't know. I think it's like 12 or something. I lost track.
But did you do it on purpose that you wrote so many POVs to, I almost want to say, distract the reader from actually figuring out who the killer was?
In this genre, you need to create red herrings. There needs to be misdirection. It's almost like a magician. They're like, look over here, but actually they're doing something behind their back. So in a murder mystery, you want there to be a lot of suspects. You want people to have means, motive, opportunity. It's very difficult to write a murder mystery from just the perspective of the amateur detective or whoever the detective is. And also, I am fascinated by so many different viewpoints. I'm fascinated about how 5 people in a room all together could witness the exact same crime. And if they were taken to separate detectives, they would describe it completely differently based on their own biases, based on who they're protecting, all kinds of things. So definitely it was to distract the reader, to have the reader have different theories, etc. But also because, like, if you look at the interplay between the twins, we've got Angel and Minx. They're these twins who despise each other. You know, most twin stories you read, they're so close and they can read each other's brains. The one twin actually wants to murder the other twin. And it's so much fun to get into those mindsets and be like, okay, who would have reason to kill somebody? Why would they kill them? When would they kill them, etc.? So in fact, the book that I'm working on now is the very first time I'm trying to write a single POV novel. And it is almost killing me to just stick to one POV because I've never done it before, and it's really difficult.
I feel that pain to my core. Trying to just stick with one POV when you know there's so much other thoughts and feelings out there, and you want to feel that book with them. I hear the exact opposite from some people who only write one POV. They're like, I have to write two POVs. I don't know what to do.
It needs to be very intentional because remember, if you write from one POV, you've got to decide third person POV or first person POV. If you're writing it in first person, that character can only know what they have access to. You know, that's why I say J.K. Rowling invented the vanishing cloak and the pensive for Harry Potter. I mean, I used to be a huge fan of hers and now no longer at all, but those were still two devices that she used to give a single POV character access to information they would otherwise not have at all. If you write that POV character in the third person, the narrator has information about that character that that character may not have about themselves. So, you know, in this kind of book, I needed characters to have information that my main character Destiny didn't yet know, because that creates tension because the reader knows it, that character knows it, but Destiny doesn't know it. So when it comes to POV, you need to be so intentional about picking first person, third person, how many POVs. It needs to really elevate the story, what choices you've made about that.
Absolutely. And so then I wonder, going from writing your book and making sure that your reader knows everything the reader needs to know, how do you find and balance time between continuing to write your next book and doing things like going to book clubs or going to book signings or doing your podcast? And how important is it to you to make sure that connection with your reader in person is there?
Yeah, it's so difficult to balance it, especially when you're a people pleaser. I want to say yes to every invitation I get. You chose to pick up my books out of a billion books out there. I'm honored. I really want to speak to you if you want to speak to me. I engage with my readers, you know, on social media, etc. I have been touring and promoting this book since the 10th of June. My mom ended up in hospital the day before my book launch, and has been sick this entire summer. And then at one point I had to cancel a whole bunch of events and go back to South Africa and then come back and pick up things again. So finding that balance is really difficult. It means that I am not nearly as far with the next book as I need to be. I need to learn how to say no to people in a very nice way that doesn't make me lie awake at night feeling like a terrible person. Is something I have to do if I'm going to find the balance to do the podcast, to do the book clubs, to mentor and to help wherever I can, but also to keep writing, which is what my job essentially is.
I think that's a brilliant way to look at it, especially because I remember a couple years ago, Brandon Sanderson came out and he said, if you want books, you need to let me not do this. And I think a lot of times us as the readers or the fans, we forget that the writer only has so much time in their life.
Yeah. I look at writers who are writing like 20 years ago, you know, and who could sit down and write and their cell phone wasn't constantly going off with somebody on Instagram who you feel you have to reply to, or emails constantly coming in with invitations to things. So few people get to do this, and I'm so aware of the privilege of what I get to do. It's all I've ever wanted to do in my life, and so I don't want to bitch and moan about it. I want to get on with it.
We greatly appreciate you taking an hour to sit with us and to speak with us on all of these important topics, especially for the new writers who need to understand what this whole industry is all about and how to get their books out there. So thank you so much.
And I appreciate all the time and effort you put into this. I can see you did a ton of research for this. A lot of prep went into it, and I greatly appreciate that, and I appreciate your time as well.
For anyone who wants to hear more from Bianca, we will have her website, her social medias, and her podcast links in our show notes so you can find her and hear more from her. We like to keep things short here on Tea and Tales. Get your fingers back on the keyboard and your pens back on paper.
And if you like what we are doing here and you love the guests that we have on and the topics that we are discussing, go follow us on Instagram, Facebook and Threads at Tea and Tales Podcast, and on Twitter/X and TikTok at Podcast Details. And go to that purple icon on your device and give us 5 stars so that we can go up, up, up. It's our moment.
Happy writing.
Bye.